show where I try to educate real stories.
Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I'm excited tonight because I'm going to bring you a very special guest, Mr. Seneca McQueen, who's going to tell us his life story. You know, I produce shows for the formerly incarcerated to tell their stories so we can educate about the criminal justice system through stories. So I love to start with people's childhood, their upbringing, and try to figure out when the life of crime began. Basically, I've been doing this since 2011, and most people say in middle school. But Seneca, what do you say? Tell me about you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Yes, so my name's Seneca McQueen Jr., and I was brought up, I was raised in 4th Ward. Well, actually, I was brought up in 5th Ward, and in 67, when Hurricane Carla came, it took our roof off our house, and so we moved to 4th Ward. And I was raised by a friend of my father, well, a relative of my father. It was my father's cousin. He had took me away from my mother when I was about 3, and then he gave me to her, and she was married, who was also a friend of my father. And then they adopted another girl, which was my sister, and we were raised up together. We had a very great home bringing.
And that's with your mother and your stepfather?
No, she was not my mother. She was a friend of mine. She was a relative of my father.
Okay. So she and her husband
Her husband, yeah.
raised you and another adopted kid?
Yes.
So did she formally adopt you, or
No.
you just were there?
I was just, they was just like they had custody of me.
Okay.
Everything, school and everything.
From
But,
3 all the way through?
Yes.
3 years old all the way through? Okay.
Till she passed, yeah. But our upbringing was real good. You know, my father, he worked actually for one of the wealthiest doctors in Houston. He was his maintenance man. So our house, you know, we basically had like phones in every house, television in every house. That's what my daddy liked to do it. Air conditioning in every room. We even had a TV in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my upbringing was good, you know. And something else, my father, he wasn't really my father, but as
You called him Dad, though.
dad, yeah, he believed in work. He was a working man, so I started working about 8. You know, we say you're gonna go work and throw newspapers and mow lawns, and that's what I did. And then and then it rubbed off on me. You know, I began passionate and loved work, and so and my sister, me and her, we was very close. I believe when we got about 15, our mother passed. We was the same age, me and my sister. I'm a couple of months older than her. Our mother passed, and when she passed, we were living in 4th Ward. I think in 1973 she passed. So basically when she passed, it seemed like, you know, basically things changed. You know, our father, he was at work all the time. And so, but my father had, and mother, before she passed, had adopted another child. Well, really 3, but only one stayed with us. And she was older. So when she passed, she basically like started taking over, you know, helping us out and everything. She was still going to school until she graduated, then she moved out. So we stayed there, and then we had to, because of eminent domain, we had to move to 3rd Ward. When I moved in 74. And I was going to Abraham Lincoln in 4th Ward. I continued to go to Lincoln in 4th Ward. 1975, 74, I was caught at school. That's my first criminal encounter with a criminal activity. I was caught at school with a bag of marijuana.
What school was that?
Abraham Lincoln.
And that's a high school?
Yeah, Fourth Ward. It was 7th to the 12th.
Okay.
So that was a school that was built once integration was ended. And I was in homemaking class. I had left a bag of weed the guy gave me to me, asked me to hold it for him. I had a briefcase, so I left my briefcase in homemaking class. We went to lunch, went to churches, and by the time we got back, when we got back, it was kind of strange because all the gates was locked of the school. And when I went in my homemaking class, my homemaking teacher told me she was like the coach wanted me, and I was like, huh? And he was coming, and we went out. He took me to the principal, and then so the principal say, if I ask you, I'm gonna ask you what's in your bag. He said, "Yeah, you can tell me. You don't have to tell me." He said, but I have to take measures to go in it. So I told him what was in it and opened it up and gave it to him. And so he said, well, I'm gonna have to call the police, you know. And so the police came, and he was discussing, so the police asked me, say, what kind of student is this? And so he said, because I knew the principal, the son and daughter, they went to the school, we were friends. And I was an AB student. So he was like, oh, he never had no problems in it. I was in 11th grade then. He was like, AB student, used to play sports. He was like, so the police was like, well, why would you want me to take him to jail? He said, I just take this and throw it away and let him go on with his life. You know, don't just mess up his life like this. And then he was like, no, I've been getting a lot of things, feedback about my not being a good principal at this school, so I need to set an example. Well, come to find out later, he was under investigation for stealing school money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Now
so
we'll get
he
to
was
the truth.
using me as a scapegoat.
Yeah, we'll get to the truth.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I just want to interrupt you there. In the 70s, because I was in San Antonio at the same time, police officers were more like that. They would throw drugs away. In San Antonio, if people were drinking and driving, high school kids, they would take the alcohol, throw it away, and follow you home. That was a different time, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And in San Antonio, you know, it's only like 4 or 5% black. So I'm talking like these wouldn't be and there wasn't no black cops.
Right.
So, you know, it wasn't any racial issues, you know, because it's going to be white cops, but they would still do that. They really only bothered teenagers in San Antonio if they were robbers and, you know, we didn't really have gangbangers back then, but you know the hoodlums.
Right.
And the thugs and the robbers and the thieves, and you know that was kind of the leftover heroin era. Like if they were just doing wrong, you know, then they'd take you down or doing something violent. But if it was drinking or smoking weed or anything, because remember the 70s, you could go to concerts and it'd just be weed everywhere.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until I became a lawyer 20 years later that back then weed was a felony.
Yeah.
You know, it's not now, but so it's interesting how police culture has changed.
Yes, it is, and I believe that 70s was a reflection from what the fight for the 60s and 50s came to, and so you know, yeah, that's police change for the better for the community during those times.
Right.
Wish we can go back to those days.
I wish we could.
Yeah. After that, so I ended up getting a misdemeanor. I got probation, so I completed the probation.
So that means you were 17?
Yes. So I transferred to Yates because before the principal said before I can go back to school, I had to go to a drug program. So he didn't tell me that until school started. And so I was like, forget it, you know. So I just told my dad to transfer me to Yates. So I went to Yates, and maybe about a year. But while I was at Yates, I was joyriding in a stolen car with some friends, and we got caught. Well, we got caught, but they ran it, and I was the only one that stayed.
Who was driving?
I was driving. So I got unauthorized use of a motor vehicle charge, which I also got probation for. I done that probation.
Were you 17 or 18 or what?
18.
Okay.
And so I completed that probation. I ended up finding a good job. I always worked, so I always had a job. But I found a real future job, you know, where I could look out for my future. I started working for Carnation Milk Company. And I moved up real fast in the company because, you know, I know quite a few things and I had done a lot of work. So the head of the company had came to me. They wanted me to start working and be an engineer. So they told me they was going to send me to U of H, pay for my college and everything, yeah. And then I would be an engineer. So they told me I had to be after 2 years, you know. So you had two options. I could be an engineer. I had an option where I can drive trucks, which in 1979, that was $18 an hour, drive trucks, milk trucks. So I told him, okay. So I worked at night,
How much was that now?
$18 an hour. That's to drive trucks, but that's not what I was making. I had worked my way up to like next to the foreman. As a matter of fact, I was going up for the foreman job, but I was next in line for the foreman job. So I worked a lot of hours. I worked at night, and a lot of times, so when we had to unload trucks on the docks, they wouldn't come in like 4 or 5 hours. We'd be at work. It was still on the clock. Truck ain't came. So, but it was a great job. I loved it. And so one day, September the 29th was the actual date. That's the day actually that I get paid, was the day that I get paid. I got paid on Thursdays. But September 29th, I had left my house around 7:10, something like that. And I had went to purchase some marijuana from a guy that I knew. So I got over to his house. I walked to his house, purchased some marijuana. I was walking back to my house. So on the way walking back to my house, it's a guy almost ran over me. And then he stopped his car and he highlighted his window. I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you. So I didn't know who he was. So he burned off. About 10 minutes later, the same guy came back and he was in a police car. So he jumped out the police car when they pulled up on me. And when he jumped out, and then the police jumped out and told me to halt. So I took off running. I ran for about maybe 15 minutes. Two other officers in another car eventually caught me. They arrested me, took me downtown. And when they arrested me first, they took me back to the guy. And the guy said that, yeah, I was the guy that had robbed his wife. Supposed to have robbed his wife on September the 27th. So they took me around to different stores, about 8, 9 different other places, and nobody said they could identify me as doing anything to them, you know. So they ended up taking me down to the station. Once I got to the station, I began talking to these detectives, and they was asking me where was I on September the 27th. And I said I was at home. I said, what time are you talking about? So when they told me the time, I said I was at home. I say I went to work, and then I went home, and then I say my daughter's mother and my little girl, because I had a 3-month-old daughter, and I said my daughter and mother, they was there, you know, so she can verify that I was at home. So the detective said, well, the lady said you attempted to rob her and attempted to rape her. And then I said, then when he told me her name, I said, what's her name? And then I said, first of all, I didn't do that, but what's her name? When he told me her name, I said, I don't even know her, you know. And so he said, okay, well then what we're gonna do is, would you agree to go through a lineup? He said, one lineup. And I said, yeah, I agree to go to that. And so he said, okay. So they took me in the lineup, and then I ended up going to about 8 or 9 different lineups.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so finally when they got through with all the lineups, they brought me back inside, and the detectives told me that I had been picked by 2 people.
Now let me ask you this. When they put you in the lineup, was it the same day that they had you in the room, or a different
Yes.
day?
No, same night. I got arrested that morning. At night, I went to the lineup.
Now, how would, if you were supposed to have tried to rape somebody, how would the husband know how to pick you on the street?
To see me.
Said-
Okay, so what come to find out in trial, his wife on the 29th, she said she had saw me
Okay.
walking.
Okay.
So she went and told her husband,
Okay.
I seen the guy who robbed me on the 27th.
Okay.
And so that's how he came out.
Okay. And you
like
were
I said,
walking?
yeah, I was walking home.
Okay.
I lived I lived in McGregor Way. It used to be McGregor Way.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived there. So yeah. So when they came back, they was telling me that the one lady said that I had attempted to rob her and attempted to rape her, And then they said, and then they asked me, well, what were you, August the 9th? And I said, August the 9th. I said, well, this is September. I said, I don't remember where I was August the 9th.
Do you remember what year this was?
Yeah, 1979.
Okay.
And so I was like, that's almost 2 months ago. I don't actually know where I was. And so when he said the time, I said, well, I wasn't at work. So they said, well, you got picked out of lineup, and the lady said you sexually assaulted her, you raped her on August the 9th. And I was like, nah, I didn't do that. And I said, I don't even know. He told me a name and a mentioned name anyway. And I said, no, I didn't do that. I didn't do it. So they end up giving me a court-appointed attorney. I had no bond because I was on the probation. And actually the probation I was on, the month I got arrested was the month I was finna get out. Well, I got arrested the 29th. I was finna get out October the 1st. And so my probation officer testified too. But anyway, before we had trial, I was appointed a court-appointed attorney named Ronald Hayes. And so I told him my side of the story. And then so he was like, I was like, I'm not taking anything. He was like, the state was offering you 40 years for all 3 cases. And I was like, no, I'm not taking that. Then he came down to 15. And then I was like, no, I'm not taking that. I said, we'll take it to trial. So he said, okay, we're going to prepare for trial. So I was arrested in September. I ended up going to trial in December. But my initial thought process was the way he was preparing my trial is that I was going to trial for the attempted robbery and the rape. He said we were going to go to trial on the rape later, the attempted rape and the robbery on the other lady, which was named Miss Malvo. So what he said is that we was going to go. So I said, well, okay, since we're going to do this here, I have a witness. Called my witness. I gave him her telephone number, her address to call her, which was my daughter's mother. So he said he was going to call her. So she and I were talking. I would go back to the rehab. I called her that night. I said, did they contact you? She said, a lady called me and asked me would I show up to court, and I told her yes. And she said that the lady said that she'll call me when time to come. I said, well, did the lady ask you, what did you know, or what you going to testify? She said, no. I said, well, basically the only thing you need to know is they want to know was I at home with you that day. She said, okay, I can do that. So we went into trial. He said that right before we went in, he said that the judge changed it and we was going to go to trial on the rape. So I said,
But it's the same day, right?
Same day.
Okay.
Same day. So I was like, okay, well, I said, well, I still can use my witness. She can still be, because he said that the lady who said I attempted to rob her and rape her was going to testify in this trial to justify the arrest. So I said, well, okay, well, then my witness, she still can testify to counter that. And so he said, okay. So before we got ready to go to trial, he was like, look, listen here. I see that you've been on 2 prior probations. I see that you've done them. You worked them. He said, I know this judge. He said, if we can have a trial by judge, he said, I probably can get you a probation.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, I'm not sure about that. I was like, and he was like, but I know the judge. I was like, but now you're saying that I have 1 person to try me instead of 12. And I was like, hey, so one thing about it, I had a father-in-law he was back on bench warrant. And I was talking to him when I go back to county jail. And he was telling me, no, don't do that. Because he was like, they trying to, he said, unless you got some money and they doing this here, working this, it's something wrong with this here. He said, you don't give up your right to trial. So I didn't listen to him. I kept on believing in the attorney. So I ended up waiving my right to trial. So when we get in, we have the trial. First of all, the police officer testified, the ones that arrested me. Then the police officer come testify was a criminologist, forensic criminologist. And when he testified, well, before he testified, the doctor who did the rape kit testified. And he testified that he, based on his professional and based on his examination of doing rape kits, it didn't show that the victim had had any sex within 48 hours but he said he did take semen from her and foreign hair samples from her. But he continued to maintain that from his concern, because she went she said right after the rape, she went straight to the hospital. And he was like, in my opinion, she didn't show no that she had sex within 48 hours. So, and as he continued to testify, he was like, I got the hair samples and the semen samples, and so when it came time for my attorney to cross-examine him, he asked him about the process. So I told my attorney, I was like, let me talk to you. So I was like, ask him, can I take the test? And so
What test?
so they can take blood and hair samples from me and match it
Okay.
with that to identify. Because so the police officer who even testified, he said I could do the test after I asked the attorney. He said, so the attorney said, could you test my client? And he said, yes, I could do. He said, and actually that would tell whether he's innocent or guilty. He said.
Well, why wouldn't they do that before the trial? I don't understand why this is happening during
So
the trial.
this what the judge asked him. So the judge said, why you just not want to do it now? Why you didn't do it before? So he said, I didn't even know that they had that available.
So he hadn't even looked.
No, he didn't know, and he hadn't even looked. So when we proceeded, so the next time, the day we came back to trial, when I went back, I was like, I'm gonna file a motion. So I put together this motion, handwritten motion for chemical analysis, and I gave it to. You seen it? You remember seeing it? But my attorney made the request when I was on the stand, and then we submitted that to the judge, and he denied it. So he denied it, so my trial continued. So when the lady came on to the next person to come on and testify was the lady who said that I attempted to rob her and rape her on September the 27th, which would cause my initial arrest. That's what I was arrested for. She came to testify. So as soon as she walked up on the stand, I knew her, but I couldn't remember where I knew her from. So I told my lawyer, I say, I know her. So when my lawyer, when he was questioning her, he said, before this incident, have you ever seen Mr. McQueen? She was like, no. He was like, do you know Mr. McQueen? And she was no. And so finally when he did that, it snapped on me. It dawned on me where I knew her from. We had went to school together. So we had went to Abraham Lincoln together for several years too, as a matter of fact. And so I called him back. I said, asked her, did she go?
So she was a black woman?
Yeah, she was a black woman. Both of them was black women. So I asked him, I said, asked her what school did she go to? And so he went back and he asked her, and she said Lincoln. And he said, what years did you go? And 73, 74, same years that I was there. And he was like, Mr. McQueen was at Lincoln at that time, and you still don't know him, you never seen him? And she was like, I don't remember him, but you do, she said, but he asked her, but you do remember him as the person who tried to rob you and tried to rape you, right? And she said, yeah. And then so after she testified, I took the stand again, and I also made another plea to take the test. And then I told him, I said my witness would clarify in regards to what she testified to. So I got off the stand, and so what he did, my lawyer, he invoked the rule, which means they removed everybody out the courtroom. Now mind you, that it was nobody really in the courtroom, but the only time they brought the people in was to testify. They brought them in, but it was some spectators in the courtroom, right? Other people, I guess they had other cases in the court, so they was there, but they removed them from the court.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a courtroom with nobody in there. So when we when we got down to so finally, when the judge found me guilty, and when he found me guilty, I went off, I just started, I didn't hit nobody, nothing, but I'm struggling, and so they wrestled me down to the floor, and then they take me to the back, and so at that time they
What was the
had
judge's name?
Judge J.D. Guyon, Guyon. It's on this
I never
motion.
even heard of him.
It's on the motion.
You can throw it to me. I never even heard of him.
Yeah, he passed several. I've been
Right after
keeping
that?
up with him, but he passed several months after my conviction.
Wow.
Yeah. So, where was I?
You were saying you went off, and so you were arrested
Oh, yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah. So when they taken me back at that time, Harris County Jail was bad for beating up prisoners.
Sex offender.
Yeah. And so
Oh, just anybody. Okay.
so when they took me back there, and the officers was waiting, they was like, "Oh, so this is the one want to act up in court." And they told the bailiff, "Bring him. We got some over here. Bring him over here." And the bailiff said, "No." He said, "Don't mess with him." He said they messed over him in the court. This is what the bailiff said. So they did mess with me. So I went in. So when the judge reset it to do a 30-day pre-sentence investigation, so this is what the attorney told me that was going to do for the probation. So when the people came out for the pre-sentence investigation, the man told me, he said, "I don't even know why they even sent me out here." He said, "You're not getting no probation on this case.
Yeah, they don't.
You're not even eligible." And then he said, "You're on probation." And he said, even though they hadn't done a motion to revoke, but he said, "So you're not going to get no probation." He said, "I don't even understand this." So anyway, but I answered all his questions and whatever. And so 30 days later, they took me back to the court, but I didn't go before the judge. They said he wasn't there. They reset it. So I went back on February. No, I can't remember what date I went back, but it was before February. But when I went back, the judge gave me 40 years.
Oh my God.
But he didn't give me 40 years in my face. Like so this is what happened. Let me remember. The judge, when I went back, he was not, he had already gave me the 40 years, but I didn't know it. So when
He didn't give it to you in your face?
No.
They're supposed to do that.
Yeah, I know. So this what they did. When I went back for when you file final sentencing, and when you you want to file a motion for new trial.
Right.
And they had a visiting judge, Judge Patterson. I think he was from Fort Bend somewhere. A visiting judge was there. My judge wasn't there. So I went before the visiting judge, and the visiting judge says, "I see where the judge have already sentenced you to 40 years. Do you have anything to say?" And I say, "The judge sentenced me to 40 years. I told him what happened. I said, "They took me out the courtroom. I haven't been back in the courtroom since December to now," which was February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1980. And he said, so I said, "I had a request for a new trial. I want a request for a new trial." And he said, "Based on what?" And I said, "Based on the judge denying me have evidence that would show, can prove me and have me released." I say, "Based on the fact that my attorney lied to me and had me waive my right to a jury trial." And then that's when the attorney, he stepped in, he said, "But let me explain, Your Honor, what he's trying to say." And what he took it a whole different way, right? And then I said, so finally when he came back to me, I said, "No." I said exactly what I said. He tricked me to waive my right to a jury trial. And the judge did this, the way I said it. So the visiting judge, I was like, "How can you even rule on my motion for new trial? You don't know none of the evidence.
About the
None of the
case,
evidence
yeah,
is even being presented
Right, 'cause
before
they're
you."
going to always deny it.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's going to be denied.
Yeah. So you weren't even a sitting judge. So how can you even review the motion for new trial?
Right.
But anyway, so he went on. He finally sentenced me to the 40 years. And so after that happened, I was like, I went back. I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to trial with this other attorney." So I was trying to do everything to get, because I didn't go back into the courtroom until the 14th, but they had already put him on my appeal, and I didn't find that out till later. He was my appeal attorney. But so I ended up hiring another attorney. I was going through the book.
Who did they appoint you to the appeal? Who did they appoint?
Ronna Hayes.
Oh, the same lawyer.
Yeah, the same lawyer. And so what I was doing, I was like, I need to get me another lawyer. But I didn't have no money. I had $300 saved up in my credit union, in the credit union at my job. I had $300. Then I had my income tax coming, check was coming, which was about $600. So I went through the phone book, and I was looking, and I found this dude. His name was Robert Bozo Jr. That was his real name, Bozo Jr. I called him. I explained the situation, what happened. I told him how much money I had. I told him I had 2 more cases. He said, man, he was a younger guy too. He said, man, he said, I sure hate to hear that. So he said, well, I'm gonna tell you what you do. He said, I'm gonna come up there and look at the records and see what's going on, and then I'll call you out. So he did. He came up there, called me
So
out.
they won't try you for 2 more cases?
Yeah, attempted rape and robbery. Attempted robbery. So when he came, he was like, I read his cases. He said, I went through the cases. He said, I heard what you told me from the beginning. He said, I'm gonna tell you, right, I'm just gonna take your $300. He said, because they messed over you, I'm gonna take your $300, I'm gonna beat these 2 cases. So while him and I was talking in the room, there's another room was right across. The DA and my lawyer was in that room. So me and him got to talking, and he left, right, right off. Then that attorney, he came, and he was trying to talk to me.
You talking about Ronald Hayes?
Right.
So I know Ronald Hayes, but I don't know this Robert Bozo.
Yeah. And so I was
Ronald
like,
Hayes, I think Ron Hayes is still around.
he done passed.
Oh, he
passed.
lately though. How long
about
ago?
3 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because I hadn't, I'd been in the DA's office for those last 8 years, so I just came back. But when I left practicing in 2016, he was still around.
Oh, yeah. I ran into him. I went to court one day.
Wasn't he a little guy?
Yeah, bald head, white guy.
Okay, the one I'm thinking about has sandy hair. I might
Oh,
be
no.
mixing them up.
Yeah, he was
Sandy,
bald head.
light, but it was thin hair. But there was another Ron Hayes. Okay, I'm gonna look at his picture because I think I know him. I might be mixing him up with somebody else, but I'm pretty sure I know him. Okay, we'll keep talking. But I never heard of Bozo though.
Well, yeah, I ain't never heard
Is he
nothing
still
else
around?
yet. No, I don't know.
Okay.
No. So after that happened, like I say, Ronald Hayes, he come try to talk to us. I didn't want to talk to him. I said, I got another attorney. So the very next day, the attorney came to the county jail, and he called me out, and he was like, they dismissed him 2 cases. He say, so everything is good.
Who told you that, Ronald Hayes?
No, Bozo.
Bozo told
Robert
you that.
Bozo. He told me they dismissed the 2 cases. So I ain't had no more conversation with Ronald Hayes. I didn't have no conversation for him. So so I was happy about that, and he was like, I wish you the best, Miss McQueen. He said, on your appeal. And he said, good luck. So I appreciated that he had done that. And, so I started saying, I was already studying the law, and so I continued. I really started studying the law. And then what happened? So I ended up staying. So they ended up keeping me in the county jail about a year. Actually, I was in the rehab. I stayed in the rehab for about a year. And
Now, were you addicted to a drug substance?
they would send you to the rehab once you got convicted.
Oh, okay.
So actually, I was like, I had 40-year sentence. I was a trustee. I was outside.
So on that 40-year sentence, did you have to do 20 years?
I did 24 years.
Oh, God.
I
And
did.
when did you go in? Well, I guess you've been there since what, 1979? Is that when you got arrested?
I got arrested in '79, and I went to prison in June 1980.
So you ended up doing a whole 24 years.
Yep.
So what happened at your 20-year parole? I just want to ask these questions just to get them
Yep.
out.
Well, actually, I came up for parole in 13 years. It was aggravated.
Oh, okay.
So
'cause
1/3.
back then they didn't have the halftime.
1/3
It was 1/3. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came up for parole when?
in 13 years.
Okay. And why do you think they set you off?
I was administrative segregation.
But is that a reason why they couldn't give it to you then?
Yeah, so what they did is while I was in administrative segregation, they came out with a rule because a lot of people who left administrative segregation and got out, they went out and killed people, or went out and did other things
I see.
bad. So they said they made a rule that you could no longer make parole. Matter of fact, I was denied parole 11 times. That you could not make parole in administrative segregation. So while I was in the prison, not only was I studying the law, I was under mental health treatment, you know. And so my mental health doctor told me that he was like, "You're not gonna never go home." He said, "What I can do is I can send you to a facility." Now, while I was in prison, I fought the system. I was the lead, one of the head persons that had started. Well, we started a whole lot of sit-ins. We started a whole lot of hunger strikes. We made a lot of changes in the system. And I was one of those persons that was initiated that took the lead on that. So I had a lot of problems with the prison guards when I was inside. Multiple fights, multiple charges so they can keep me, I couldn't go home, of threatening an officer. That's how you could say something, they give you a threatening officer, you're not going home.
I see.
And so that's the game they played. And then if you were somebody that fought against the system and made changes, because I fought on the system, and I used the race card, because that's what it was. It was, you go to these units and they 90%, 80% Caucasian, and 60% black, and the other, 10% white and 30% Hispanic. But you don't have no way to control these inmates. So I fought the system. I challenged my case many times. So I filed a writ challenging my case, and on that writ, I initiated that Ronald Hayes was an ineffective system of counsel. I mentioned that the judge had denied my 14th right, due process right to fair and impartial trial by denying the motion. And I also denied, so my case went on appeal. They put Ronald Hayes on my case on appeal. It went to the Court of Criminal Appeals. So at this time, what they was doing, they was taking these smaller courts and was sending people cases. Like I was from Houston. So whatever you was from, whatever city you were doing, they was sending your appeal case to, my case went to the 10th Court of Appeals, right?
Where's that?
Here in Houston, right here in Houston. It's the first, I'm in the 14th.
First and 14th, yes.
First and 14th. So mine went to the first. And, but the DA made a request that it be moved to Waco. So my case was moved to Waco, and I continued to file motions to have Ronald Hayes taken off, because he filed a frivolous brief. He filed a brief with 2 grounds of error challenging my arrest. And I already knew that was frivolous, that didn't have nothing to do with the case. So I filed a supplemental brief. I filed a supplemental brief in Waco. And when I filed a supplemental brief, they ruled on it. They said I was not entitled to hybrid representation. But mind you, Mr. Hayes was no longer my attorney. So I kept filing.
They feel like hybrid representation is, your
2
lawyer,
people.
because you can only
And me.
file one brief. That's the problem. So
Yeah.
he's already filed it. So basically, when you asked to be a part of it pro se, you wanted to just redo it.
Yeah,
They're
do
not
away
gonna-
with him.
And do away with him, but it was already done. So
Yeah.
they only gonna look at it once, and you can only file one writ.
Yeah. Oh, I filed multiple writs.
I know, but they only gonna look at one.
Yeah.
They're only gonna really take one seriously, and your writ should have been based on that motion that you filed and the fact that you wanted to be tested.
It was.
That was what was ineffective, is that your lawyer didn't get you tested if testing was available back then.
Yes. Yes.
Because I was told that back in the 70s, the testing basically just narrowed down maybe the race of the person when it came to semen testing and things like that. DNA, a lot of people have been exonerated by DNA because now DNA testing is more accurate. They actually say that it was or was not you. But back then, it was just like, it kind of shared the race and the blood type.
Yeah.
So that's not 100% accurate. So that's how a lot of people that went in when you went in got out later, because of testing. If they kept samples, because all the agencies don't keep samples, but if they kept the sample and it was retested with newer technology, which could still happen today, that's one of the only ways that I know of that you can actually get a second writ is the Chapter 64 writs, which I believe Ellis, when he was a senator, championed in the State House, and that was based on those modern way of looking at sexual kids.
Yeah,
Did you
that's
ever do that?
Yeah, that's why we're gonna get to Ellis too. That's actually I was writing him for many, many years after the O.J. Simpson trial, and I asked him to. I had filed for a motion for DNA testing, and so let me go back a minute. So the police who testified, they had the technology at that time because he said that they had transferred over to the forensic where they do the it wasn't DNA but forensic testing. He said in rape cases that's how they do most rape cases when they get rape kits from a victim. He said if they don't get a rape kit they can't, but he said when they get a rape kit then they take some samples from the person that's charged to match him, and he said it's 99% outcome. So, but yeah, as I was going through,
So that's never happened. They never tested the.
no,
They've never
and,
done
and this
that.
and this is what I'm finna tell you. You'll see as I got more. So, like I say, when they denied my appeal, I went in federal court, same issues. Now, this is interesting. So, on my ineffective assistance of counsel claim, when I went to federal court, they have 180 days to answer. They didn't answer. Attorney General, Greg Abbott was Attorney General at that time. They didn't answer the writ, and so I filed a motion to be released because they didn't answer the writ. So come to find out, they waited. They still didn't answer. 6 months later, finally they answered. But what was happening is the dude had the same lawyer I had. He had filed the same case, and his case was approved in federal supplement. The federal district court had granted him relief, and that's why they was waiting. So, but when it got to the Fifth Circuit used Strickland versus Washington. And so that's how they overturned it. So right after they did that, then they sent me the Strickland. They denied my case of Strickland versus Washington. So
I think yours fits Strickland though.
it fits Strickland with how it fits Strickland because in Strickland versus Washington, say that's what he did. He said by not calling my witness was trial strategy, and that's what Strickland
Yeah, I
versus
mean they
Washington.
can say
Yeah.
trial strategy, but they also have to find out would a reasonable lawyer have done that. I mean the problem that he has to me that follows Strickland is that he didn't have the DNA tested.
Yeah.
That's where he is ineffective because a reasonable lawyer in a rape case is going to have the DNA tested if it's available to be tested.
Yes.
So to me, that's where he was deficient. And if he would have done that and the outcome could have been different, that's when they're supposed to reverse it.
Yeah.
So it's based on the DNA to me.
And I wouldn't have had that problem if this would happen. So this would happen. So I end up, like I say, I kept writing Rodney Ellis for years after I was watching the O.J. Simpson trial. And so he sent me a letter saying he was working with those to get legislation. But I had already filed for DNA testing, but they denied it because Texas it wasn't valid in Texas.
Right.
So when that passed, I got a letter from Rodney Ellis' office telling me that they had passed it.
Right.
So then I resubmitted a motion.
Right.
In that motion, I was granted an attorney. And so the attorney was like, he sent me a letter. He was like, man, I'm so happy you've been there so long. This is one of the letters. That's the last letter he got from it. But when I filed that motion, James Bolden, who was over HPD Crime Lab, he filed an affidavit. James Bolden, he filed an affidavit, and the clerk, Harris County clerk, they said none of the exhibits from my trial were ever processed. Read it, it's
Wow.
right there. They was never put it in
Well,
his,
what happened to him?
who knows? I requested Open Records Act, from the police department, asking them what happened to my records. But they said it was never filed after the court, and I contacted the district clerk. She said they never brought the boxes of your evidence down to the trial.
Dang, I never heard of that before.
Yeah, me neither. So they denied my motion, And as you can see, the attorney was like, man, that's bad news. I thought I was going to get you out, but they denied your motion. And he was like, without the evidence, there's nothing else I could do. So I ended up filing my case with the Innocent Project in New York, Barry Select and them. They held my case for 10 years, and then they came back and said, well, no DNA evidence available, so it was nothing they could do.
Yeah, because that's what they do. They
Yeah.
want the DNA, so they never capture the DNA for you.
No. So then I filed, I went to Texas Southern, and when I was at Texas Southern, I filed with their Innocent Project as well. I used to talk to this lawyer. Me and him used to talk all the time. I used to go in and talk to him. I can't remember his name. He just like disappeared. But he used to tell me, because I had my transcript and everything, we would sit down and go over everything right. He was like, even though you can't get no reversal on DNA evidence, he said it was so much corruption with this judge, with this DA, and with this attorney. He said there's other avenues that you can get, prosecutor misconduct that you probably can get. So he said, I'm gonna deeply look into this. So he kept my case for 8 years.
Who was this?
The Texas Southern University. I forgot his name.
Okay,
It was Anthony Houghton was his name, Attorney Anthony Houghton. He kept my case for 8 years, and then one day he called me over to TSU and Carl Earl Jones building. He called me, and then he said, I got bad news for you. He said, I'm leaving. So, but he said, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn your case over to this other lady that's coming in and see what she can do. So she came in, I immediately, I stayed right. You see where I stayed by the school. So I immediately went over there when
You
she
out
came.
of prison by then.
Oh yes, I'm out of prison. So I immediately go and I meet her, and I talk to her and discuss everything with her. They kept my case another year and a half, and then she come back and she said it was nothing they can do, neither because there's no DNA evidence.
Well, they didn't keep the evidence.
No,
And that's
they
what
got
you
rid
need.
of
You got to have the evidence preserved before you can do anything. So
Right.
that's the problem. Without the evidence, they can't do it. Because when they're looking at it backwards, they got to see what was there. You got to keep not just the transcript, but the actual evidence. And a lot of law enforcement, they'll keep that DNA in freezers or refrigerators or something, but at some point, they have so much of it, I think they destroy it.
Yeah, well, they said they never even, that's what the clerk said, it was never even filed.
The clerk doesn't have the DNA. The
and-
clerk only has, the exhibits.
The police department, Jane Bolden said the evidence
Yeah,
from
so
my trial was never
that
brought.
the police keep it in their refrigerators. So if they don't have it, or
Yeah.
sometimes it's the labs if they send it to the lab to be tested. But see, that was never tested. So the police have to send it to the lab.
So you see what they say right here? It was never tagged into evidence.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's
Well, so
from,
I wonder what the police was. There was all kind of wrong stuff done.
yeah. They didn't want me to prove my innocence. You could imagine what kind of repercussions it would have.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
Well, when they have the rape kit, the police officers have to go pick it up and put it into evidence. And it sounds like they never picked it up.
What they did, because he did the test. Remember, I say the criminologist testified that he had
So it was
tested the
but
rape
I
kit.
didn't know if that was a criminologist at the hospital or the same
No,
kit was.
criminologist
It was
at
the
HPD. Yeah.
So they did pick it up.
Yeah.
So,
And
but he never
tested
put it back in the lab. He never maintained it. Somehow.
What they did, I don't know, because I can't
But nobody
see.
ever knows. Yeah, nobody
Yeah,
ever knows. You have to
nobody
go
would
by
know.
what you say. Even
Yeah.
lawyers in the free world, you don't know what happened. 'Cause,
right.
you can't get behind those doors of the police department, so you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Dang.
I just come from the concept that they didn't want me to prove my innocence, so that's why they did
All
it.
right, well, this hour is wrapping up. So,
Tell about my book.
yeah, you can say.
Yeah.
So you've written a book about it, and I want to invite you back so you can talk about life in prison for 24 years. Now, when you got out, what year did you get out?
2003.
2003. So they'd already created the sexual registration.
Yes. Yes.
Because a lot of
I
people
was-
back in the days when you first got in trouble, they would take deferred adjudication a lot in probation, and there was no such thing as registration.
Right.
But with all those people, when it came out, they went back to them.
Yeah,
and made them all
1970.
register.
All back to 1970.
They went back to 1970.
Yep.
And they started it, what year did they start it? I don't know what year they started. But when I first started as a lawyer in '92, you didn't have to register.
No.
So I can't remember what year they. I think it was the late '90s.
Yeah, it had to be some part in the middle of the 90s.
Yeah, sometime in the '90s,
Yeah.
because people were appealing it at that point. Because a lot of people, they said, would take deferred adjudication because they didn't want the children to go through it, especially if they were stepchildren and they really didn't do it, but the parents were going through a divorce and they just didn't want. So they would just take the deferred.
But what they did to us, that's how I know, because if you was convicted, they came to the prison and they came and took your DNA.
Well, now everybody that gets a violent
you in the
crime, they
system.
put you in that DNA system now.
Yeah.
Everybody's in that system now.
Yeah.
They probably got my DNA and I've never been arrested. I know they got my fingerprints.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
probably got my DNA too.
Yeah, but that's why I wrote this book, to tell my story. This is actually my first book. I'm working on the second book, which is going to tell about my incarceration, those 24 years of hell that I suffered.
Well, I want you to think about that because I want you to be able to talk about the experiences you saw. Going in the time you went, the world was going through a lot of changes back then. A lot of people were benefiting from the civil rights movement of the late 60s. I know there was a lot of still sit-ins and, like you said, things that happened in the 60s to make change. People still had that spirit.
Right.
Inmates still had that spirit to do that.
Yeah.
And then you were also there when AIDS came along. So I've interviewed people who were there, and I think one guy used to work in the infirmary. People just dying. They were just dying. So I want to talk about all those things that you went through next time. So thank you very much for being willing to tell your story so many years later. Wow, it was a long time ago. I think you're about a year or two older than me because I got out of high school in 1976. So I was around in the 70s, but I was in San Antonio, so I wasn't here. So anyway, I really appreciate you telling your story, and thank you very much. And show your book on your way out. Just show your book.
Thank you for having me.
So he wrote a book about his incarceration called Licensed but Determined. Silenced but Determined. Sorry, I'm not reading good with this one contact. Silenced but Determined. So he's telling his true story of what happened to him. But next time we talk to Mr. McQueen, we're going to talk about life in prison for 24 years. Thank you so much for telling your story. And that's all. We'll see you next time. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I